Good afternoon and welcome everybody wherever you are joining us from today to deTour 2020 and to our panel on the future without design. My name is Philip Annetta. I am the managing editor and co-founder of Design Anthology magazine based here in Hong Kong. I'll be moderating today's session, and with me are two eminent designers who I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion with. To my immediate left is Christine Lew, co-founder of Studio Florian and Christine. Studio Florian and Christine works at the intersection of materials, craft and social innovation. They push the boundaries of materials for use in social forms and functions, and I think that'll be really interesting to dive into in a little more detail for today's topic. And to Christine's left is Otto, the design director of LAAB Architects, also based here in Hong Kong. Welcome, Otto. Otto is an award-winning architect who believes that design can not only solve pragmatic problems but also have a transformative effect on society, and I think that's going to also be really interesting to drill down in with our theme today. So our theme is the future without design, which sounds a bit gloomy. Essentially what we're suggesting is what the future could look like without deliberate design, or what it should look like if we can design it well. So I think in 2020, we found that our current way of life is vulnerable to shocks across multiple areas. Of course, we've had the health shock of COVID, and that's led to, for example, an economic shock. It shocks across other areas as well. So what we need to be doing as a society, perhaps, is building resilience, building physical and psychological well-being, and building sustainability. Can those things be designed? And if so, how? I don't have those answers, but hopefully you two might. For the audience, a bit of housekeeping. There's a link on your screen to submit questions, so please do that. I think there'll be some really interesting points coming out of today's discussion, and hopefully you can join in with that from home. So before we really start in on the theme in detail, I'd like to get a little background on the work of both of you, Otto and Christine. And Otto, if I can start with you, as you work at maybe more of a macro level as an architect, what was the journey that led you to being an architect?
Okay, so now I've started LAAB for 7 years, and prior to that I was at MIT. And at MIT, I have the chance to get in touch with architecture, get in touch with design, and get in touch with the discussion on futures. So the most concerned topic when I was there was all about energy, sustainability, ecology, and so on. And so even for my own thesis project, it was focusing on the mega scale. So I call it the powerscape. It's basically a powerscape.
Okay.
So it's basically a landscape of architectural canopies that blanket deserts, and that captures solar energy, and also providing a moderate temperature, creating an environment for farming activities. So basically, the project is about how we can create energy, food, economics, and ecology at the same time. So it's a new way to look at urbanism, but now when I'm back to Hong Kong, when I'm working on LAAB's project, we are looking at things at a much smaller scale. We look at buildings, we work on interiors, we look at furniture, and what we are developing are very sensitive to human interactions, details, and as well as touches and materiality. So but the intent is the same. Whether it's at the macro level or the small scale level, we look at things with very conscious about sustainability, very conscious about health being, especially this year.
Okay. Is that what you would say your ethos is?
Yes, we are very interested in this, and we think that is our responsibility to design that is consciously social, consciously ecological.
Okay. What would be an example of a project of yours that you think has demonstrated that quite well?
Yeah. So we have been working since we started LAAB. Like for almost every project, we put sustainability as a very important agenda in the design. And I think one of the first interesting project that we did was back in 2014. We were still at PMQ at that time. And then we were asked to design for festive art installations for Christmas all over Causeway Bay. And we were so worried about this project because we find it difficult for not producing waste, but while creating Christmas festive decorations. So at that time, our idea was to collect a lot of PET bottles from water bottles, and then we turn them into Christmas baubles, like decoration baubles. And then we assemble thousands of these Christmas baubles and create different types of art installations. Some are lighting, some are teddy bears, and then different types of landscapes and so on. And after the Christmas, we actually upcycle the baubles and turn it into carpets and also felt materials for producing, handbags or pencil cases.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it has a third life. So basically, we turn our installations from like just a physical entity, but creating multiple lives with the same material. And that has started our interest to carry on in different projects, and we are very sensitive of finding ways to use waste to acquire waste, and then spend in a project and build, whether it's furniture or interiors, with materials that are not only waste but also meaningful to the project.
Interesting. Yeah. So that provided social value in the decorations as well as a material and economic value later on.
Especially for one of the projects, for a lot of people may have heard of, is the Tea Cafe. It's a project that we work with the government's Environmental Protection Department. We designed a cafe and also not only designed it, but we also built it. We built furnitures that comes from a pier. The furniture came from the fender wood from the demolished pier in Wan Chai, and then we salvaged the wood and turned it into some sculptural furniture for Tea Cafe.
Using resin, I think? Is that
yes. One of them using resin. So basically, the fender wood has different status of erosions. So the most intact part, we use it as tables and also benches. And then the most rotten part, we use resin to encapsulate it and produce what we call the harbor cubes. So returning the wood into the harbor as it was like in the past 50 years.
Interesting. Yeah. And you also teach, is that right?
I taught before. Yeah. At Hong Kong U, I focus on digital craftsmanship. So basically marrying, the future with the past, like the future technologies. I teach how people can use programming, digital tools to create design, but at the same time with the respect of traditional craftsmanship. So we try to marry the two things together and produce things that could not have been done before.
Okay, excellent. I think we're going to drill down into a couple of those things shortly. So Christine, if I can turn to you for a few minutes, what was your journey to becoming a designer?
Yeah, I would say it's been a really free-flow process. Florian and I, we were both doing our masters at Central St. Martin's. Flo was studying industrial design, and I was studying material innovation. And just through a lot of cross-collaboration projects, we realized we had a lot.
Did you say materialization?
Material innovation.
Oh, material innovation.
Yes. And we just noticed through our cross-collaboration projects that we had a lot of similar interests, and just we wanted to push the idea of how we can work with sustainable materials and how we can put that into new forms and how we can integrate that into our everyday lives. And it led to us founding our studio in London. And one of our first projects was really just looking at the waste material found on the Thames River. And we found a lot of different plastics and glass. And a process that we've been working on is the terrazzo technique, and we were working on how we can integrate this Thames River pollution into kind of a new kind of material surface. And we were thinking
a composite like terrazzo.
Yeah, exactly. And we were thinking about, because we graduated and we're like, oh, what's kind of next for us? That's always a big question. Yes. And it led us to finding this grant through Design Trust here in Hong Kong. And we got it, and we were like, yes, let's go to Hong Kong And we thought we were going to be here for 3 months, and now it's been like almost 3 years. But our project here was actually also researching kind of the Hong Kong harbor waste. And yes, we literally went out and investigated the different things we'd find, and we even rented out a boat and just took the kind of traditional fisherman net, and we're just like scooping out what we would find. And the main materials we worked with were plastics and glass and rusted metals. And through kind of this like material process transformations, we kind of transformed them and upcycled these materials into a collection of modern furniture.
Okay.
So yes.
I like it. It's very punk.
Yes, it's a little like nomadic and free-spirited. But I would say it's very material driven, and also I think it's just like our passion and curiosity. Yeah.
Would you say that's a project that really crystallizes your ethos?
Yes, I would say so. And it kind of just like escalated and rolled into a lot of different projects, because we also found like other people were really interested in this topic and really wanted us to like continue pursuing it. So we felt encouraged, and here we are.
Have you both felt a lot of support for that kind of work in Hong Kong?
At least for us, we didn't feel like we would, or we were unsure, because we didn't really have any ties to Hong Kong. But to our surprise, we've been encouraged a lot, and we felt like also through the public engagement that there's a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah. I think like in the recent years, the city is getting more interested in design, and through different opportunities, we have worked with many different organizations, brands, institutes, and people. So I think now Hong Kong is like a place where you can find many different opportunities.
Okay. So clearly you both see a strongly social role for designers. Do you remember what made you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, I think this is, to me, is really a global trend, and it's also coming to Hong Kong. I think social engagement at large is very important for designers as well. So designers should not only work on the hardwares. I mean, not like product designers do not only make furniture or products. Architects do not only construct buildings. But we can use the training, use the education, use the design thinking to do more socially. So both in our projects, we can have a clear social dimensions. But also, we can also start some social initiatives. A lot of firms, especially young firms in Hong Kong, are doing that very well. And at LAAB ourselves also have a sociologist who work on specifically work on social projects, all the social dimensions of the project. So we think that this is very important, and we just do not want to only speak, but we want to put it into actions.
That's fascinating. I can't imagine that's very common to have a sociologist in an architecture.
It's not common. Yeah, we try to work as a very interdisciplinary environment. So the kind of culture that I learned from when I was in the US is a very multidisciplinary environment. So there are many people with different talents, different expertise. So I try to learn to have that culture also built in my own studio. So in our studio, we have like sociologists, we also have engineers, we also have designers from multiple backgrounds, not only architects, interior designers, but also graphic designer, product design as well. So with that range of expertise allow us to look into things in many different perspectives and also build things in different ways. So as you may have noticed in our projects, we always have like, interaction designs, transformational designs. We try not to limit our capacity or capability to deliver ideas that we wish to achieve. Yeah.
Okay. And Christine, I wanted to pick up on that with you as well. Do you remember something that, some realization that the designer has a strongly social role? Or?
Yeah, as you mentioned, part of our studio research is really looking at what does social innovation mean to us. And we kind of define that as being able to create a network with a bunch of different creative collaborators, and also look at how we can use like the old and the new to come together, as what Otto mentioned too. Like we really focused on how old traditional craft and also new innovation can come together and create kind of different hybrid ways of making and creative collaboration dialogue. So there's something very social about that. That it's not just us as designers designing our like own studio, but it's really going out, talking to different experts in fields, and really thinking about how we can create these connections and to create our project. Yeah.
Okay, so you are consciously trying to help people or help the community in some way in your work,
and also want the community to help us as well.
Yeah.
A lot of inspiration actually comes from the community, and a lot of support as well.
Yeah.
Once they understand the process of design, the process of creativity a lot better, then they can get more involved in terms of collaborations.
Oh. Okay. One thing we mentioned in the introduction was resilience. Do you think design can create a more resilient society?
I definitely think so. I mean, I think if you look at all of humanity and old civilizations, I mean, we've got to the place where we are today through innovation and design, whether it's through architecture or the creation of aqueducts or farming methods. Like these are all creative thinking, problem solving, and these are all things that are, I think, integrated into design thinking today. So I think it's very much in our human nature to want to problem solve, and even in the times of pandemic, I think the positive thing that we can think about is it's almost like giving us like a restart or a chance to think about how we can, obviously like something's not working, so how can we take this chance to make things better? Right?
Can we design in such a way as to help us absorb shocks as a society, I guess?
Yeah, I think in recent years we are more focused on like adaptability, how space we design, how objects we design can be more transformative to adapt to the expected changes as well as the unexpected changes. So like over the past few months, obviously things are changing rapidly. The way that we organize space, the way that we organize events are all changing in the speed that you haven't seen before. And we are doing quite well on that. Like I now seeing websites that are three-dimensional, almost like a space. We are doing meetings very smoothly over the screens. And like when we go to restaurants, when we go to shops, like all the health measures are all in place and getting more and more integrated with the original designs.
It's true. And can spaces improve our well-being? I mean, this has been discussed a lot, I guess, and you are primarily a spatial designer, and you've worked on public buildings and residential buildings. How can a space improve our well-being?
Yeah, I think space has a huge impact on well-being. Like whether it's a living space or office space, it's basically shape how you interact, how you live, how you spend your day, whether there is enough sunshine or whether there is enough space for you to rest, to exercise, or to work. So the space basically really defines your well-being throughout the day. And for some of our projects, like we really work closely with our clients to understand what well-being means to them. Some of them means like more brighter environment. Some of them wants the space to exercise, or some of them want it to be easily clean, basically. So
to be easily
cleaned, to easily maintain and clean. And some wants a lot of plant. Yeah. And for some of our latest project, we also have like new ways of promoting well-being and sustainability in the project. For example, in our Nature Discovery Park project, not sure if you know, is like a rooftop garden at K11 Museum.
Yes.
And we work closely with the sustainable team of New World to develop not only the architecture, but also the programs that can happen within the architecture. So we have farm-to-table dining.
Do you mean, when you say the programs, you mean the activities?
Yeah, activities, yeah. So we have to develop the two side by side, right? So we understand how the space can promote well-being, can promote ecological consciousness, can promote sustainability at the same time. So not only did we use a lot of waste materials or upcycled materials in the design, but we also developed the programs together. So we have farm-to-table activities, we have urban farming, we also have like a various range of activities such as live drawings for kids to happen in the space. So instead of just a leftover rooftop space, but it become a public space where people can learn about well-being as well as sustainability at the same time.
Okay, yeah. I was actually going to pursue that angle a little bit more. Yeah, that we're a bit strangely set up in Hong Kong, quite uniquely, I think, in that we have, what is the percentage of Hong Kong that's parkland? It's something like 70%. But in our urban areas, we don't have a lot of public space. And as someone who's worked on some public space projects fairly recently, I wanted to get your perspective on what more we can be doing as a city.
Yeah, so I'm actually very interested in the rooftop space of Hong Kong, because like just outside of my apartment, which is right there, when I look outside my apartment, I always see a lot of
empty rooftops.
Yeah, very empty rooftops, and they're very bare and underused. And for example, in the K11 project, we are given the opportunity to really rethink about how it can adapt to different programs, such as the sustainability programs that I just talked about, but also cultural programs, spaces for allowed cultural activities to happen, such as some pop-up bands or music shows or dance and so on. So we, and then of course, it's not only like a blank public space, but it's a space where there are lots of vegetations, there are lots of very well-designed furniture, there are open lawn without balustrades. You know, it's very important to have an open piece of green without balustrade. And then we also grow a lot of plants, not only in planters, but also on the walls. So it creates kind of an immersive experience into the nature. It's very biophilic, and you have a sense that this is not like a concrete jungle, but you are kind of in the nature. So we think that the defining line of urban and nature do not have to be such definitive. I think it can be more integrated. We can bring more nature into the urban, and that's what we try to call it, the urban nature.
Okay. And in your discussions with your clients, are you seeing a growing receptiveness to this idea, or?
Yes. I think everyone likes trees.
Okay.
So everyone likes that. As long as, but we also have to be very careful. We have to be very, like, when we propose something, we have to be very thoughtful. So the way that we can actually implement the idea is very important. So we have to work on a lot of research. We have to find the right partners to collaborate and find ways to make it work. Because, you know, having plants, whether it's indoor or outdoor, will require quite a lot of maintenance. And there are also concerns of irrigations, how the water can come from, how the water can leave. So there are lots of technical challenges that we have to overcome. But we try to keep the design intent. We strongly recommend the client to do so. And so we have to work very hard to make sure that we can deliver.
Okay, sure. And actually, there's a couple of points on that I wanted to pick up with Christine as well. Are you finding yourself fairly limited by technology, or is it at a point where you're fairly comfortable with what you can do?
With technology, well, as talked about, like we like to look at different heritage and traditional crafts, especially here in Hong Kong. But we've been thinking about how we can, incorporate that into like our modern day lives and how we can fuse that with modern technology. And for example, one of our latest projects, it's called Tai-O Lamp. And we literally went out to research more about the traditional fishing heritage here in Hong Kong. So we went to Tai-O Village. And
yes, it's a village, for those who don't know, with traditional stilt houses, which is it's not very common in the area anymore.
Yeah, it's really unique, really special. I love it. And we were really interested in the fishing culture there. And we're learning about the fishnet weaving technique where, the old fishermen would actually make their own nets. And we were thinking about, okay, we really love this technique, but how can we incorporate that in a modern way? And we were thinking about a process that we have been working on is 3D printing with different materials. And we came across this 3D filament where it is made from 100% recycled nylon from old fishnets. So we just found this similarity between fishnets and kind of this new material of 3D filament from fishnets. And we decided to 3D print these lamps, and then the shade is made from that 3D printing process. And on the outside, we integrated the fishnets on the outside to create this texture. So we just really like this combination of how the old and the new can come together. But yeah, in terms of technology, I think it's pretty accessible in the way that there's a lot of different softwares, and now that everything is online and a little bit more integrated with virtual technology, I think it's very much the future, and we definitely embrace it. Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk a bit more about how you see the intersection of sustainability in the heritage preservation? Because I think that's something that not a lot of designers are doing.
Yeah, it's something that I think we've been able to explore more, especially with Design Trust. Because another project that we did, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's with Parr Mansion. It's this old mansion house that is owned by the Tyrbaum family, and it's preserved here in Hong Kong, and they have now renovated into a music school. And Design Trust gave us the brief of how we can take kind of the old heritage of this mansion and create, they gave us the brief to create a light object. So
a light object?
Yes, a lighting object. And we were looking around the mansion, and we found these old tiles that they used to kind of patch up the tile roof in case anything happens. And it's these kind of circular roof tiles, maybe you're familiar with them. And we thought the shape is really unique. And we were thinking about how we can integrate this old tile into a new lighting system. So we ended up creating these, you can see on our website. They're called totem lights, and we essentially kind of built it up because they're traditionally used in this kind of vertical format. So we kept it like that, but we created these vertical totem lamps from the tiles. So there's kind of this interest in old and new and how we can preserve this old craft and heritage, but in a way that makes sense in modern society.
In a way that preserves it visually as well, so
Exactly.
so that it stays in people's minds.
Yeah. So it's been something that we are really interested in, and I feel like it's created very interesting outcomes, and it's something that we'd like to keep pushing.
Some of the traditional crafts, especially those represent Hong Kong that you see every day, there are a lot of reasons why they still exist after so many years. So there are people who make that every day, such as, for example, the steel gate, the iron gates of the shops. They are very practical, and they're also pretty decent and nice. And there are some craftsmen who work on it every day, and they perfect their skills over the years. So in one of our projects, actually the Hong Kong house in Echigo in Japan, we asked some local craftsmen to collaborate with us to actually produce those steel gates, but in slightly different ways. So we believe that they are very good at the craft, but not necessarily they have to do it exactly the same way. So we open up questions, and then we also try new patterns with them. So basically, we try to bring in new ideas and try to give inspirations of how they can tune or slightly alter their techniques and produce new designs with us. And so for the Hong Kong house, we also use it as an opportunity to exchange and share crafts with the Japanese, because it is an art gallery and artist residence in Japan. And it will be a perfect opportunity to share Hong Kong craft in such a setting.
Yeah, fascinating. Do you think that there are lessons to be learned about sustainability from heritage crafts? I mean, these are often with materials that were just readily available or renewable.
Yeah, I think because these crafts have lived such a long time and gone through so many generations. Like there's a reason why they have been kept, and I think it's a really beautiful thing. And it would be truly a shame if we didn't, preserve it in some way. So I think part of our mission as a studio is really about finding ways how we can preserve it, preserve these techniques, and also be able to share it with the new generations so that they can be passed on, may not be in its original form, but in some way or manner that they can be carried on. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for the craft, especially traditional one, it's not only about the craft, but the story behind the whole heritage story. So there is a humanistic aspect to it. So last year, we worked on a self-initiated project. We call it the Last Sawmill.
The
last Sawmill. So we collaborate with the Last Sawmill in Hong Kong, which is a cheeky sawmill. It's in Shanshui, the north of Hong Kong. And it's basically a big warehouse space where they have a lot of wood and also machines from many years ago. And they may risk being demolished soon because of the Lofton New Territories redevelopment program. So we, as architects, we wish to preserve some memories of the sawmill. We build models, we make measure drawings of the place. We also invite a lot of people, including the creatives as well as the general public, to join workshops to experience the sawmill. And from that, it's not only to us, it's not only about experiencing this heritage, but of the craft, of the space, of the story, but also trying to prompt questions about redevelopment of Hong Kong. So, what is heritage? So, does it have to be like a colonial building, or craft? Can it be craft? Can it be people? Can it be stories? So we try to keep it as an open questions to everyone, as a discussions, as a discourse on what is heritage. Can we preserve it? How do we preserve it? Yeah. Do we always have to just put it in a panel or put it in a glass box? Are there many different ways to preserve it?
Yes, to live it almost in a modern form. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's also interesting to me that both of you have seemingly quite a deep respect for craft traditions, which I think is quite interesting. I think we often can it's tempting to just throw those away and do things in a new way. And I can remember having a conversation, I think it was last year, about Korean architecture with a Korean person who said, yeah, we don't really have a discipline of architecture in Korea. What would happen is that the master builder would go and survey the site, they would look at the weather patterns, wind flows and all of that, and try to create a building that, and I thought, that sounds like architecture to me. And it's interesting that you're both recognising the design value in some things that might not have really been thought of as design, that are more craft.
Yeah, and I think that's also a beautiful part of Hong Kong, that there's still a lot of these kind of old craftsmen out there continuing their craft. And for Florian and I, we've been lucky to work with kind of these master metal craftsmen, some of the last neon light artists, and also these like paper weavers. And I mean, honestly, we had to just like look, research, and then try to find them. And that's like part of the fun, because we never know who we're going to find. And being able to like create this relationship with them too, I think that's hard to find in other parts of the world, whether in America or England. I feel like
really,
it's a little bit tougher. And I think in Hong Kong, there's this like willingness to share their knowledge with us, which we've been really lucky to have the opportunity for them to just teach us personally, especially since we don't really speak Cantonese. So yeah, it's been really cool, and we love that about Hong Kong.
Okay. Something that we're starting to get some audience questions coming through, which we'll also get to. Just something on that was, it seems that the younger generations, there's a lot of talk on one hand that, you know, these crafts are dying out, or the people who are doing them are very old, they're not passing them on, young people aren't interested. But actually, in other ways, we're finding that young people are really going back to making.
Exactly. Yeah, so there is an interesting misunderstanding here because we are so interested in the new stuff, we are so interested in the innovation, digital technology. Doesn't mean that we want to get rid of the traditions, get rid of the traditional crafts and buildings and so on. So we really think that the two can actually come together. They can mutually assist. They can respect each other, and sometimes integrations can happen. So we are very interested in not having this kind of boundaries. So it's not, I mean, it's not a reciprocal relationship between the innovations and the traditions. I think that the two can actually work together.
Interesting. Okay. So let's get to a couple of audience questions, and we'll come back and pick up on that if we have some time. So here's a question: what are the difficulties in doing social engagement projects? Does anyone want to take?
Yes, it's difficult because so first of all. So first of all, is like, why do we want to do it? So this is a question that happens a lot in our studio. So we know that we are an architectural practice. We are specializing in spatial designs. So we question what kind of social engagement we should do. Whether should we just create, just do it like NGOs? What kind of public we should serve? There are many needs in the society, and we have to carefully identify which is the right topic. And especially, and currently we are more interested in subjects that is more related to what we are really good at, like spatial designs.
Where you can provide value.
Yeah, where we can find value, where we can contribute. So we currently doing it in two ways. We identify subjects that is more related to our expertise. And the other ways is we try to integrate the social dimension in every of our projects. And so doing social engagement doesn't only mean you have an NGO or you have a social enterprise, but we can do every project, every design socially. Okay. So we engage users' feedback, we make it more fair to the inhabitants, we do it more responsible for environment and so on. And so there are many ways to have the social agenda within our project.
Okay, but it takes a lot of planning to
Yes.
look at to create the most value.
Yes.
Yeah, understand. And actually, Christine, at a more practical level, how have you gone with these social engagement projects not speaking Cantonese?
Well, luckily we've been able to get by with English and like body language. But I think for us, because we're like a two-person led studio, our social engagements are probably smaller scale compared to Otto. But most of our social engagements has been, well, we've done workshops with schools, and we've also done them with just little talks with, you know, people who are interested in our projects. And I don't know if I would call it difficulty, because I think we've been getting a lot of just like organic and natural interest, and people coming to us and asking us to share, you know, our experience and what we've learned. So I think it's actually been, I mean, maybe on a smaller scale, it's a little bit easier to manage. And also, yeah, I think we've been welcomed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent to hear.
Yeah, and social engagement can be in many different ways. It's not only, sometimes it's workshop, sometimes it's talk, sometimes sharing or tour. And recently we actually do a very special social engagement project actually with movie productions. With a movie that focused on preservation of neon light.
Ah, right.
So originally we only share our office as the venue for the shooting, but throughout the process we exchange a lot with the film crew, and then we also sort of work together on some of the storylines.
That's an interesting case study in itself, I think, neon lighting in Hong Kong. It was because, of course, they were ubiquitous, they were everywhere. And then it seemed like there was nobody doing them anymore, but then suddenly a few people have sprung up who have revived the craft, is that right? I think there are now a few studios still making them.
Yeah, I mean, actually, based on what our neon light artist told us, he said it's mainly because most of the master neon light artists have gone to mainland China and left Hong Kong, whether it's because of living or money reasons. But yeah, I think there's still ones left that are really truly passionate about carrying on this Hong Kong neon light making tradition. So
it's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, and to tie us back into the main theme, I would like to ask you a very big question. Is Hong Kong well designed? And if not, what are some simple ways we could improve it?
It's a very difficult question because Hong Kong is large and diverse, and at the same time, what is well designed? Yeah. So I'll take this question at a more personal level.
Sure.
So I live in Shanwan. I also work in Shanwan. Our office is in Shanwan. I really like the neighborhood here. It's creative, it's diverse, it's inspiring, and we like the intimate scale of this part of the city. But this type of neighborhood, this type of streetscape is not often seen in new developments, like in areas, whether it's in Tseung Kwan O or whether it's in the West Kowloon or other new territories districts. You rarely see this kind of typology, but you only see like huge scales of buildings, really large podiums, really tall towers, and more disappointingly is there is loss of the streetscape. So you're only inside the air-conditioned areas, and you're connected by the shopping mall, and you're often off the ground. You may not even see the street. So I think that is not. I think most of these projects are based on master plans by the planners who prioritize efficiency as well as the economic of scale. And so, but there is a lack of attention to how to introduce streetscape, how to have a more intimate scale with the planning and development, which I find it a bit disappointing to see.
Understandable. Do you think there's any kind of low-hanging fruit, any simple fixes that we can be doing?
I think it's hard because like a lot of the planning actually came from years ago before it got implemented. So it's already in the book before like architects even see it, and then it become like rules for us to follow in order to create the architecture. So it's a bit too late when we actually see it. So the planning process has to be have to be rethought or have to be changed like in a very early stage.
Okay. And it sounds like you're seeing some improvement in that, though, with cases like K11 and the. I think that's a very porous space also on the ground level, and then there's the rooftop greenery. So hopefully there are these little shoots of optimism at least.
Yes.
Okay. We have another audience question. What special characteristics does Hong Kong design possess compared to other countries? Do you want to take that one, Christine?
Hong Kong design.
Yeah.
Ooh.
As a relative newcomer to Hong Kong, what strikes you about it?
Well, I think on just like a urban landscape design view, I mean, I'm personally from Austin, Texas, and I've lived in New York and also London. So now coming to Hong Kong, I think what really strikes me is that there's something really beautiful in the sense that everything's kind of colliding together, because not only is everything really close and it's dense, but I think that's kind of the unique beauty of it, because in other cities it's a little bit more spread out and people are a little bit further apart, but here in Hong Kong I feel like not only do you see the new and old architecture coming together side by side. Sometimes also all the people, like of all age and demographic, they're kind of all mixed together in the same space, while I think in other cities they're kind of segmented more. So I think that's something really special about Hong Kong. And I think in terms of design and maybe like furniture or fashion, there's more room for, I think, new things to spring up, because maybe design has been established a little bit longer in, I guess, cities like New York or London. But I think in Hong Kong, there's something refreshing about it, because I think there's just room to play and experiment and not be, I think, pressured by competition necessarily or, other stresses, but really being able to, at least for Florian and I, really having the space and, the opportunity to really let, the material experiences and the people that we meet inform the things we design.
That's a really interesting perspective. It's not something you hear very often. It's often the people are turned off by the density, I think, when they come from other places. Maybe, Otto, you can comment on that. But you can argue there's something a bit comforting about being around people.
Yeah, I think that definitely two things. One is about the vertical city. So I really know about high-rise. I really know about how escalator and lift work. Especially when I was working in London, I find myself a really true expert of how lifts work, because I have seen all kind of elevator systems.
Sure.
So that's the part that high-density living brings to me. But the other part is the intersection of cultures. So I think that a lot of people say Hong Kong is where the East meet the West, but for me, it's actually a more diverse intersections for many different cultures actually exist in Hong Kong. It's the Chinese culture, there is Japanese culture, a bit of American, a bit of British. So it's very really diverse place where a lot of cultures are connected to this city. And I think Hong Kong cannot be just purely represented by a dragon, or cannot be represented by dim sum, or like red white blue stripes. Bars. They're more than that, I think. So what makes Hong Kong, what makes Hong Kong Design Hong Kong is really the designers behind that create this project. And you can see like it is, there is a global sensitivity embedded within the designs that we do.
Still a very international outlook.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
It's very international.
Okay. Another question from the audience: how is the pandemic situation affecting the design field this year?
For Florian and I, we were part of this project with Design Trust called Critically Homemade, and it was established their brief to designers in Hong Kong was to create an object that can be done in our home and like with materials readily available. And we were challenged with this, and we decided to create something called the Hong Kong brick. And essentially, we were thinking about how we can use our terrazzo technique, but implementing kind of the things we would find in our neighborhood. And I live in Causeway Bay, so we found that a lot of shops were closing down due to the pandemic, but there was like a lot of demolition. So we picked up a lot of this waste material that we found, and we decided to use that as part of our terrazzo mix. And we decided to go with the final form of a brick, because not only would we find the bricks from buildings being shut down, but we also felt like it's a symbolic item in the sense that it can be used to rebuild. So we felt like the brick was a good mold to use. So we basically created a mold from this brick we found, and then used our terrazzo technique to create this final brick. And yeah, I think it really challenges designers to be a little bit more creative about the materials we use. Maybe it's a little bit more locally sourced, and also I think supporting the communities and creatives around us too. So I think it's build a little bit more intimacy too in the creative network, and sharing the struggles that we've all encountered.
Local materials and more community involvement.
Yeah.
Otto, has it changed the way you look at your spatial designs?
Yeah, definitely COVID become a very important topic within our design development and conversation with clients. So everyone struggles because we are not so certain about the future, how the culture will transform, how the way we work, the way we live, the way we collaborate or socialize changes. So it's interesting to have like complete measures in the design. Of course, we have buttons without touches. We have integrated solutions for the temperature sensors and the alcohol. We have partitions, but more than that, we're starting to have new spaces for delivery rules in our restaurants. We have more flexible, smaller spaces because people think that events may not happen in a short period of time. So spaces become more flexible, more adaptive, and then even for workspace. Now most of our projects are looking into flexible work environment. People do not have dedicated seats anymore, but there are more meeting rooms. There are more social space where people can work actually independently.
Yeah.
And then people are more health conscious in terms of the use of materials, the presence of daylight, the presence of plants, and so now we are gearing towards a more sensitive brief in the designs, and we are still like trying to research and know more, experiment how we can do it better.
Okay. So track back to the workspaces for a second. Does that mean that we're looking at what kind of work has to be done in the office and what kind of work doesn't have to be done in the office? That you're looking at offices and workspaces as really, really purposeful, that there are meeting rooms, that there are multifunctional spaces, but that it doesn't have to be just a bunch of desks anymore?
Yeah, so the desks are now smaller, and there are less amounts of desks, but there are many more meeting rooms and social spaces. So to adapt to like the future arrangement of the like either AB team or a more flexible working environment or working culture. So the offices are now more looking like a clubhouse or a cafe than just an office. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, I think we have time for one more question, and that is, as non-designers, what can we do to contribute to a future that's well thought about, that's well designed?
Well, I never feel like anyone is a non-designer.
Okay. Non-trained designers,
Yeah.
non-practicing designers.
I mean, I think it's uniquely in human nature to, as mentioned, like problem solve and create new things for ourselves, whether it's something simple to make our lives easier. And I think as a designer, our main mission is to also bring awareness to others about issues that we care about, whether it's about sustainability or craft preservation. And I think it's important to just allow the audience to keep an open mind and also, start a dialogue and conversation and allow everyone to start thinking more deeply about how we can make things better. And I think it's important for everyone to come together, whether designers or non-designers. I think with more minds, we can obviously create bigger and better things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well said.
Yeah, I think everyone, just like Christine said, everyone can be a designer. So you can make things, you can create things, you can put together ideas and look at things creatively. So I really appreciate the word of design thinking to be incorporated in all different types of business or even daily life, because I think that creativity in is so important, and it's also fun to engage. So you can try to look at things in different ways, critically in different ways, and also try to live it or try to enjoy and experience it in different ways. So everyone can be a designer in his own way.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. And I think a good note to end on as well. So thank you both very much for your time today and for the work that you've put into being here and giving us these great answers. I hope, to the audience, I hope you've enjoyed it all, and I encourage you to check out Otto's work with LAAB and Christine's work with... And, sorry, are we having sound issues? Okay. And also to continue checking out the design dialogues as part of the first virtual deTour. Thanks for your time, everyone.